20 meters and up, it's going to have significant gain over a dipole. So for one 50-foot piece of speaker wire and $29 for a balun, and $3 for a connection to your radio, you've got a multiband antenna that works anything you want it to work and fits in a baggie and goes hiking with you pretty easily.
When you're above tree line, how do you suspend it?
With a fishing pole. With a fishing pole.
What about the ends? I mean, you can do obviously the middle of the fishing
Oh,
pole.
wait, you just
Three fishing poles?
you tie them to a rock, and you pull the rock a little bit further away, and it's an inverted V suspended from the ground.
You find 4 speakers and just got 2 people hiking.
Yeah,
hold on to
if you
that.
take Sue and Frank with you, it's not a problem.
Sue's not here.
Okay. This is the same antenna using ladder line. That's ladder line. And if you take this directly to your tuner or take it to a balun, as we had on that other one, you've got a little bit less loss because you're losing a little bit less on ladder line. If you were going 200 yards from your house, you wouldn't want to be using speaker wire. This is 22 feet on either side and a ladder line feed. Okay, the next two antennas are for sure the coolest antennas that we've looked at today.
Yeah.
And ladder line is a lot cheaper than coax. I run about 550 feet.
Hey,
ladder
Eric.
line.
Stand up. Hold your arm 8 feet 3 inches high.
Stand on a chair. Give me a picture of this. Look good.
Hold, stand up. Okay, this is a half square. No, that droops down. Don't pull that, that droops down. Remember your test on phased verticals? How phased verticals had gain, if you fed them half wavelength out of sync, they had gain going this way and that way. 3 dB of gain over a standard vertical. And what this antenna is a half. This is a half square. So this is the center core of the coax feeding a inverted vertical falling down. This is a half wavelength phasing wire, not radiating. And this is a quarter wavelength vertical phased with that quarter wavelength vertical. So this antenna will give you 3 dB of gain this way and that way. And it'll handle 1,500 watts. And all you need to do is you need one piece of string thrown over a tree limb and use your coax as the other support, because the coax wants to not be parallel to either, or not be inside either of those lines. So this gets the coax right for the feed. This antenna only needs to be that far off the ground. As long as the end of that thing is not touching, this antenna is giving you 3 dB of gain. When I first moved to Colorado and I was really hiding antennas, I built one of these for 20 meters and stuck it in a tree. Actually, what I did was I threw a line over 2 branches and just pulled it from the far end of that and pulled it until that bit was vertical and this was over the other branch, and weighted these a little bit. And at 16 feet of height, you have a Yagi pointed at Europe, and just off the backside, Australia. And if you did another one pointed at South America and Japan, you had fixed Yagis pointed at your 2 best DX destinations for the price of 1 wavelength of wire. So
You should put a couple of Christmas lights on it.
yeah, but no, this is a super cool antenna.
You can only use it once.
If you think about it, it takes the same space as the dipole because it's a half wavelength, in both instances. But by having these little danglers, I've picked up at least 3 dB on the dipole in the same space, and I don't need to have it as high. The dipole optimally should be 16 feet high. This optimally should only be 8 feet 3 inches high, 8 feet 4 inches.
So there's no advantage to making it higher? I mean,
There's no advantage on this antenna to making it higher. So we tape it to some stuff like this. We could extend this if we wanted to. And instead we bring, can you hold the air?
Yeah.
Instead we feed it like that, like bisecting that angle. And we now have a rotatable gain antenna that, you know, it's taped to this thing, and I can now point it at Europe or Japan or wherever I want to point it.
Could you feed it through the pipe?
Yeah, you could, but you can't feed it right parallel to that half wavelength phasing element. You should either feed it from outside the antenna or at that angle I showed you. Either way, this
No, you
is.
could feed the water through the pipe. That horizontal
Oh,
water.
yes, you could, right. You could, all of what is going from me to Pete could go through the pipe
Yeah.
and fall out the other end of the
Does
pipe.
the
Yeah.
deflection in the PVC cause any problems?
No.
I run ladder line through some PVC pipe for about 30 feet and it seems to be okay.
And the deflection of the pipe, I'll address that now because it's on strategy.
I have a hand friend that found PVC melted at 160 meters.
Did a little welding, RF
How did you
welding.
find this out?
Transmitting in July instead of January.
I recently made a 12 and 17 meter two element Yagi and used PVC and did what he's doing. And also used the fishing poles, and it works great.
Oh, cool.
A strut stops the section.
You lay awake thinking of that.
I didn't understand.
Taking notes, Charles?
Yeah, well, I am, I guess.
String stops sagging down.
Oh.
Sort of like suspension belt.
This is our final antenna, the Yagi in a baggie.
12 dB of gain?
6 dB of gain.
Okay.
And front to back of about 18 dB.
Does everybody here know what he's talking about?
But yeah, I got the baggy part.
Well,
I don't know.
the gain, when he talks about 3 dB a gain, that's one S unit on your S meter, okay, on your receiver. He's talking about 6 dB, it's 2 S units stronger.
One S
And when
unit,
he talks
but
about
4
front
times
to
the power.
back, what he's talking about is the direction you have it pointing, you don't hear signals off the back of the antenna at all.
This is a Maxon.
Okay, this is a Moxon.
Moxon.
This is in fact a Yagi. So this is the radiating element, the driver. And what we've got is we've got a dipole in here, but it's bent over to here, the last bit, which isn't carrying much current. And we've got a reflector, which is about 5% longer. And we've got an insulator here. And this antenna, if you hang it up like this in the trees, and is pointing that direction with 6 dB of gain. Same gain as a commercial tribander. So I operated CQ Worldwide 2 years ago with a 10 meter version of this, which this is, inside of 15, inside of 20, hung by fishing poles, and I had slightly better antenna that year than any antenna I've used since. 'Cause
Where
this
did
is,
you point it, Ashton, during the?
well, I rotate it.
Oh,
All right, I had it on a TV rotor, which you can buy at Radio Shack for $60. Okay, but yes, as Pete points out, there's an apparent problem with hanging this in the tree in that it's pointed strongly in one direction, but it's actually not going to hear much at all in that direction and not going to do a great job off the side. So,
You have to rotate.
nah, what we do is, I need an assistant.
And when he says up in frequency,
Where's an
it's
assistant?
down.
Come on, Bill.
Up in frequency from 20 to 10 meters is up in frequency.
Okay, Ashton, what do we do?
You're holding this here.
Right.
Honest to goodness, all this PVC was $11 and I may have spent too much because I went to the A's in part of the alphabet.
Probably to save money on gas.
Okay, you tape the antenna to this structure.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go, I see.
Yeah.
Very clever.
So the antenna is taped to this structure.
I think it's ice cream sandwich or
You
jelly.
put another piece out here and tie that to a bigger piece of PVC or a 16-foot 2x4 or whatever, and let go. We now have a fully, let go, Bernie, trust me. No, we have a fully rotatable, high gain antenna.
Pretty good, yeah.
All right. Who won the Yagi in a baggie?
Brown. Frank
Frank,
did.
All right, Frank, either one of these Yagis in a baggie, either the Moxon or the half square, your choice.
I think the Moxon one.
Okay.
Just,
Where do you, how do you
Maybe
figure
you should call your wife on the way home.
Are you the head of HRO?
So Ashton, just as a testimony as to what this can do, years ago when I lived in Glenwood, I lived over here on Riverview where,
Hey, Ash?
the antenna, just a second, please. The antenna couldn't see either Japan or Australia, and I was just going crazy wanting that contact, so I made one of these. Camped out overnight up here on Red Mountain, and the 3 watts on a old heat kit HW8 worked both Japan and Australia all night long. It was just the coolest feeling in the world.
with the Moxon?
Yeah.
Yeah. The Moxon is absolutely the full equivalent of an expensive aluminum Yagi. The klutzy construction I showed there probably wouldn't handle 100-mile-an-hour winds. Other than that, it's going to outperform anything you can buy. And everything I showed here was black, small, invisible. So I don't want to hear any more, I can't get an antenna out. I brought some books as examples of this. This is the best wire antenna book. It's from the English books are all better than the ARRL books, because the ARRL books seem to like to give you a lot of calculus practice. And the English tell you how to cut wire and build an antenna.
Watch out, it's going to Richard's head.
And
They don't do it in inches.
there's
and
one
feet, though.
particular thing in here that's kind of cool, I can show it to anyone.
Actually easier, though.
It's what's the radiation effectiveness of a shortened antenna. And it'll show you what a short antenna does on 160 or 80 and what you're giving up. But most of the antennas I showed today were actually, they were all at least quarter wavelength, except this is a little short. And so most of them have the opposite, they have gain. So that's why I think everybody should be able to get on air pretty easily.
I have a question about, why don't you go first?
Hey, Ash, did you say this is 10 meter?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that sure don't read 10 on that tape.
Yeah, I probably,
It says 15.
I think
Tuna.
I measure it, if it's 8.3, I think I cut down another antenna to be 10 meters for this meeting.
But you got 15 on that.
If you measure either side of it, if it's 8 feet 3 inches, it's 10 meters. Oh, I should refer you to, I did include on here a little chart of how long each side of a dipole or each element of a vertical is for any band. And these aren't super critical until you get to maybe 80 meters or 160. If you're within an inch or two, you'll be fine. So those are all the lengths when you're building antennas. The half square is quarter wavelength down, half wavelength across, connected to quarter wavelength down. The Moxon, there's a Moxon calculator on the internet. You can easily get the dimensions for any Moxon.
How far again is the Moxon again?
The Moxon should be half a wavelength high for optimum performance. Any Yagi should be between half a wavelength and, what do you think's the top, Phil, 1 wavelength?
As high as you can get it.
Well, the patterns start to break up though. You start to get vertical components.
Full
when you get-
wavelength is real nice if you can do that.
Yeah.
But that's a lot for
Yeah.
different
Hey
things.
Charles, my highest antenna is 23 feet. Okay, I work 200 countries in the last contest, so,
Yeah, and I got 69 countries at
Yeah.
10 feet.
yeah, that's,
Say, Ash,
it's better always, you know, if you
Well,
can get up.
you're up on a.
Well,
But my antenna still.
what you do get,
it's better than
if you
that.
lower a dipole below half wavelength, and particularly if you lower it below quarter wavelength, you both get more vertical out of it, and you get omnidirectional. You don't get the directionality. So, up at about half wavelength, you start to get the focus that you're designing into something like a Moxon or a half square. But if you, of all these antennas, there are a bunch of cool antennas. I must have hung 150 antennas easy since I've been ham. That half square is magic. It's the same length as a dipole, only has to be half as high, completely invisible, and just pumps a signal into the, it's bidirectional, but it just pumps a signal. So like for field day, quite literally where we leave those Yagi antennas fixed east, I mean, we could hang a half square for each station and have just as big a signal. We wouldn't, you know, our Yagis probably aren't high enough to be getting much directionality. We could hang this one simple piece of, take it out of a baggie, hang it up in 15 minutes, and we'd have every bit as much signal as we have with the Yagis.
Ash, you said when you were talking that you had one inside and
Gotta
another.
chime in there.
Did you sort of have several Moxons all on
Right, you know how we have the
the upside down?
hex
umbrella?
beams
Yeah.
up at field day?
Yes.
Where you've got, in that case, 3 antennas strung in the same fiberglass structure.
Yeah.
I just did the same thing using, I needed something longer than PVC and a little bit lighter, so I had a gizmo that had 4 points on it, and I just I had 4 of these. Can I just give that to you?
There's online instructions to do this.
Held on a PVC center and tied up, and then I taped the 3 antennas at different lengths out and had the 3 feed lines come in and down. So I built a hex beam, although it was actually a little better performing hex beam. The Moxon's a higher performance antenna than the hex beam. And, you know, it was taped together with a bunch of electrical tape, and it wouldn't have handled a very big storm, but it got me through CQ Worldwide with the best score I had ever gotten.
When was that?
2 years ago.
Ah.
I've improved on my score.
Okay, I have a really silly question. What would be the best wire antenna for mounting inside of a laptop? And the reason why I ask is, in my computer I have an extra PCI Express slot, and I've been reading online where you can take a TV tuner card and then make them for that slot and use it as a software-defined radio receiver and listen to
Wow.
like ham bands. And I'd like to be able to do that. What would be the best? What would you recommend for? I don't want to like drill a hole for and have coax out.
Well, you
receive only?
clearly need your antenna away from all that electronics and power supply and stuff.
Yeah.
And if you're listening to shortwave,
Just
shortwave likes
big
long
long wire.
antennas, right? If you're listening to 20 meters, that antenna should be at least 16.5 feet long. So you just need to make some little connector in there. It doesn't sound like the easiest way to listen to shortwave, especially because I've, for a couple of years, been dying to give away some shortwaves that nobody seems to want to take me up on.
Phono connectors, a lot of people use.
Yeah.
York and stuff.
You get some really cool.
But you have an HF radio, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
Wouldn't that be an easier way?
Well, I just think it'd be really fun to do it with my computer because I have this extra slot and it's driving me nuts that it isn't filled.
I think Pete can help you with that problem more than me.
Okay, Ash, oh, another
Yeah,
question.
actually, Bob, you brought it up. I have, an HF at Kenroy TS 520, actually 3 of them. It has an S-meter scale on it. You know,